بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It is the 17th of the month of Rajab, 1432 years after the Hijra of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, corresponding with June 19th, the year 2011 CE, and this is part 2 and the final part of the history of Salafiyya in America. And as we mentioned last night, walillahi alhamd, that the history of Salafiyya in America, or Salafiyya in America for the vast majority of the American Muslims, their reference point is like the mid-90s for some of you, and for most of you, the 2000s. We mentioned last night as a follow-up that there are many evidences that Salafiyya came to America or became prolific in America in at least the 50s, the 1950s. We gave some examples. And also the 60s. We also mentioned last night that we should be constantly begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our hearts firm on His religion and His obedience. And walillahi alhamd, alladhi bi ni'matihi tatimmu salihat, we learned or we practiced, maybe not learned, but we're going to find out right now. We practiced a dua from the ad'iyah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So with that, inshallah, because we didn't do it just for show or just to, wallahu musta'an, sound like Sufis, we did it so that we can actually implement it. And just as a side note, it is a dua that you can say in sujood. And it's a dua that you can say before you make taslim in your salah. So we like to have some brothers, inshallah, before we begin. If anyone memorized it from last night, went back to their room in this hotel or another hotel down the street, or they went home and practiced it in the car, or in the van, on the truck with their wives, on your bicycle, whatever. We'd like to hear from some brothers, inshallah, that can bring that dua. That which wife of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the one that was asked about? Salama radiallahu anha. Naam. Anybody remember the person that asked her? What was his name? Huh? Nope, not Abu Darda. Nobody remember? They're checking their notes. Shahr ibn Hawshab. Naam, rahimahullah, wa radiyallahu anhu. And for those who study the science of hadith, they know when they hear this name, they know what to expect about this personality, Shahr ibn Hawshab, which is another topic altogether. And I'm not one of that speciality, but we should be familiar when we hear that name, Shahr ibn Hawshab. Rahimahullah wa radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So, anybody have the dua? Yeah. No, tafaddal. Naam, the brother said, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. And for those who are close, their earshot to the brother, they probably heard him pronounce the tha like a sin. Because some of us come from places, countries, our dialects, the brothers, they pronounce certain letters differently, like the brothers from Morocco and some places like that. They may pronounce a tha like a ta. So they say, instead of saying fani, they say tani. Is that right, brothers? Right? And some brothers, like from Sudan and other places, they may say a tha like a sin. Instead of saying kawthar, inna a'taynaka al-kawthar, you may hear them say kawsar. Right? Naam. Or Uthman. Instead of saying Uthman, they say Usman. And then Americans, they mess it up all together. They say Osman. Right? That's the way we say it. Osman. Right? Anybody else? With the dua? Nobody? So all you brothers, you weren't here last night. Right? All the brothers weren't here last night. You have it? We don't want people who already knew it before they came. We want somebody who learned it last night. Now, did you know it before you came last night? Okay, go ahead. ثبت قلبي على دينك. نعم. Anybody else? Okay, again. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. O control of the hearts, make my heart firm in your religion. Or deen, for those who don't like to say religion, your deen. Now, as we mentioned last night also that there were magazines and periodicals and newspapers and conferences that were calling to and ascribing to Salafiyya years ago, before 2000 and before the 90s, in the 80s. We don't have any record of them happening in the 70s or the 60s or the 50s. Even though, once again, we have record of people who are Sunni. When I say Sunni, because every Sunni is a Salafi and every Salafi is a Sunni. You know, and this is the 9th time that I'm saying this publicly. I've said it 8 times before. Because Brother Dawud Adib, your brother sitting here, he made a serious mistake. And I've never told you where I got it from, so now I'm going to tell you where I got it from. He made a serious mistake at the Adams Mark Hotel some years ago, for those who remember, when I said every Salafi is Sunni, but every Sunni is not Salafi. Remember? And I've been correcting it ever since. Just keep saying it. Brothers keep saying, well, you already said it. No, we're going to keep saying it because just yesterday, a brother said it again, and he said he got it from me, so that means he didn't hear that. So I'm saying it again. That was a serious mistake. Now I'm going to tell you where I got it from, because I used to be with him, I met him, and I used to converse with him. I got that from Safar al-Hawali. That's where I got it from. Safar al-Hawali. May Allah guide him to Salafiyya. So we had periodicals, we had magazines, we had conferences. As we mentioned last night, the first conference for Salafiyya in America was in the early 80s, 82, in Maryland. And Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq was there. There was a book that we used to teach from in the 70s and the 80s. And that book, this is it in English. This is the cover of it in English. The general prescripts of belief in the Quran and Sunnah. Some brothers are laughing. You remember this? Al-Qadaya al-Kulliyya fi i'tiqad kitab al-Sunnah. I'tiqad fi kitab al-Sunnah. By Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq. This book we used to teach from. We used to teach from this book. This was like a companion. And there was another book that we used to also use called خُذْ عَقِيدَتَكَ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ by our Sheikh who just passed, just recently, this year, just a few months back. Sheikh Muhammad Jamil Zainu. And that book, they translated into English later on, but we were teaching from it before they translated into English. It's called Acquire Your Creed from the Book and the Sunnah. Maybe some of you have it. We used to carry it in our pockets like this, our thigh pockets, like the size of the spoon. And we used to go to the masjids and teach from that book, along with this book from Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq. The person who translated this book, that is General Prescripts of Quran, of belief in Quran and Sunnah, was Mahmoud Murad, who was the first head president of Jami'iyya al-Quran wa Sunnah, the Quran and Sunnah Society, commonly known to you brothers as QSS. Used to be QSS America, and now it's QSS Canada, because the head now, because they've only had three heads. The first, Mahmoud Murad, a Palestinian from Palestine. The second one, Muhammad al-Jibali, a Lubnani. And the third, and one who is the president now, is Abdul Mun'im al-Libi from Libya. Mahmoud Murad is the one who translated this book by Abdul Rahman Abdul Khaliq al-Misri Thumma al-Kuwaiti. He's originally from Egypt, and now he's in Kuwait, and he's, as we mentioned last night, he's the head of what group? No, Abdul Rahman Abdul Khaliq is the head of what group? Jami'iyya Ihya Turath. Right. Who produced what book or what magazine in English? It's a history test. It's the history of Salafi in America. It's a history test. What magazine did they produce from the ones that we showed last night? AL-HIJRA? No. Muslim Creed. That came from where? What state in the United States? Florida. Right? So this is important. One of the brothers was talking on the side, Abu Nuh, Hafidhahullah, and he was asking me, why don't we write a book about the history of Salafiyya in America? And as I mentioned, some brothers have been asking me for about 5 or 6 years to do this. And I told him there's 3 reasons why I held off. 3 basic reasons why I've held off from doing a book on the history of Salafiyya in America. Number 1, as I mentioned last night, you have to have names. First of all, you have to have accuracy. You have to have accuracy in the names, times, places, people, events, etc. Because it's history, right? You have to be correct. Number 2, and I'm not absolutely sure that I would be absolutely on the point with it. I can say maybe 82 or 83. Some things I can say 82, the month of July, 84, the month of October. It was in Ohio. It was here. It was there. But you have to have accuracy. Number 2, mentioning names may not be a good thing. Totally. It may not be a good thing because there are people, I'm not saying we're not going to do it, and I'm not saying we're going to do it, but mentioning names may be kind of touchy. It may be kind of touchy, and I'm sure you can understand what I mean, right, brothers? Can you understand what I mean? Number 3, which is the most serious for me, your brother Dawud Adib. Number 3, I have to talk about myself. Because the reality is, I'm a major part of the history of Salafi in America. وَلَا أُزَكِّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَحَدٍ وَاللَّهُ حَسِيبِ وَحَسِيبُكُمْ. Allah is going to take me account, and I don't praise anybody, but it's a reality. In order for me to talk about the history of Salafi in America, I have to talk about myself. I have to. What am I going to say? The brother said, this happened. What brother? The Sheikh just said, name your men. Who? I was here when this happened. I was here when that happened. I saw this. I met Hassan Turabi. I'm saying for real, I met Hassan Turabi. I met Idi Amin. I met Benazir Bhutto. I met them. So how do I tie all these things in? How do I talk about, for instance, Anwar Abdul Muhaymin? We've heard of him, right? Philadelphia. Right? You've heard of him? Quba Institute. His father was Sunni. Accepted Islam in the 40s, 50s. His father was Sunni. He was Sunni. Rahimahullah. So now, I've already ruffled the feathers of Anwar talking about him so many times. Now here, they're going to think now he's trying to clean it up. He's going to switch up and talk about and praise my father. No, you have to give, as we say, give people their props. He was Sunni. Just like our brother from Pakistan, Muhammad Aslam, rahimahullah, who they killed here in Philadelphia. He was Sunni. There's no doubt in my mind they were upon the Sunnah. So these are some of the reasons, or three of the reasons why, for me, I've been trying to keep away from writing something about the history of Salafiyya. There are some other things also that become problematic. The criticism and the disparagement that people throw at the Salafis of America, and Salafis in general. But for us, because we're here in America, I have to say Americans. You know, there's so many different things that are criticisms, and some of them are not justified. Many of them are not justified. Many of them. And some of the people who hate us, the Salafiyun of America or of Britain or wherever, they do what the people of the past did, similar to what they do to politicians. If you find a politician, kafir we're talking about, you find a politician that you see, and I'm saying between quotes, he's a good man, he's an upright man, he's a man that's, you see he's sincere about making changes in the society. They can't do anything to stop him because he's a man who's taking care of business. What do they usually resort to, brothers? Huh? What do they do? They discredit him how? Character assassination. He's a thief. He did this. He committed adultery. He committed, they go on and on and on. You see it all the time. This is something that happens to us all the time. So this becomes another problem. The Salafis are harsh. They're rude. They run people away. There's a young brother, and I'm saying young because I'm 60. He's younger than me. There's a young brother that I didn't even remember even talking to him about Salafiyya. It's a young brother years ago, almost 2 decades ago. Almost 2 decades ago. Young brother. I met him. He had no beard. No beard. He was connected to Warathuddin Muhammad. And as he says, he's the one who reminded me, and I forgot about it. Because I've talked to so many people and brought so many people to my home in the past. He said, you brought me to your house and I stayed an entire weekend. He said, and we're talking about Salafis being harsh and disrespectful and unconcerned. He said, you brought me to your house, and this is his words, you didn't know me from a can of paint. I had my pants dragging. I had no beard. I was connected to Warathuddin Muhammad. For an entire weekend, you let me stay in your house and you taught me about Salafiyya, and that's why I'm Salafi now. That's what he told me. That was Abu Hassan Malik. Abu Hassan Malik. I forgot all about that. So now when we talk about the history of Salafiyya and talk about writing books and things like that, I have to say these things. That becomes a problem. That becomes a problem. Should it be said, Allahu a'lam wa ala? Should it not be said, Allahu a'lam? I remember, and once again, because the history of the 50s and the 60s, we have bits and pieces. So we can only talk about those things that we're absolutely sure about until the research that we're going to conduct comes in with actual hard facts. There are brothers that I have to mention this because there are brothers that are instrumental in spreading a da'wah to Salafiyya. So I have to, using the phrase again, I have to give them their props. I remember when we were with Brother Abdullah Mukawi, who I mentioned about the HIJRA magazine. He was the editor-in-chief from Lebanon. From Lebanon. I remember we were on Branford Place in Newark, New Jersey, because that's where the magazine was being produced, and that's where they used to go to classes with Abdul Mukawi, myself, Jaraj, Tawfiq Housley, Abu Zainab, who's here now, a brother named Fadl Kareem, Hafidhullah, who lives in the Bronx right now, who was the first imam of the masjid that I ended up becoming the imam, because people think I was the first imam. But the first imam of that masjid, which was known later on as Masjid Muslimin in Brooklyn, was Fadl Kareem, who's 4.5 years older than me. He's 64. He's there in the Bronx right now. And we hope that this telelink is being, reaches him, because they were having problems yesterday online because he's not able to get around the way he used to. Hafidhahullah. So we were sitting there talking to Abdullah Makawi. And Abdullah Makawi, and he probably wouldn't mind, yarhamakumullah, he probably wouldn't mind me saying this. He's a little eccentric, or he used to be back then, a little eccentric. And he used to have all these tapes from Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah. All these tapes from Sheikh Nasser, rahimahullah, who, as some of you already know, I got the chance to meet. So we used to ask him, let us copy the tapes. No, can't copy. Let's copy. And the copying machine was right there in the center on Branford Place in Newark. He wouldn't even let us. We're not saying let's take the tapes out and go to Elizabeth, New Jersey, or Jersey City, or East Orange. The machine is right here in the office. No, you can't copy them. So one day, because we know he had a connection to Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, so we asked him for the telephone number so we can call Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah. No, you can't get it. Can't get it. It is because of our brother who's selling right now those Chinese herbs, right here in the hotel right now, Abu Zainab Tawfiq Housley, hafidhahullah. It is because of him that I was able to call Sheikh Al-Albani on a regular basis. Because he said to Abdullah Makawi, هذا كتمان العلم. He said, that's hiding knowledge. Keeping the Sheikh's telephone number is hiding knowledge. And Abdul Makawi gave us the number, and that's how I was able to call Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah. So brothers need to be given their props with regards to Salafiyya. When we look once again, going back to the Huda newspaper, these centers where you could get your Huda newspaper, there were spots around the United States and then around the world because it began to flourish. When we read some of them, we find Lahore, Pakistan, UAE, United Kingdom, Guyana, South America, Canada, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, Medina, Saudi Arabia, Alexandria, Egypt. Let's stop there. This center in Pakistan, Lahore, Pakistan, was connected to a Dawah magazine. If there's anybody here who knows about a Dawah magazine in Arabic, then you know about it, and you say, you see, I see where, and I say between quotes, where Salafiyya was going. If you know about a Dawah magazine. When you look at United Arab Emirates, who's the contact person for the Huda newspaper that is ascribing to Salafiyya in the UAE, in Dubai? Anybody want to take a guess on who it was? Because most of you are new, you don't know. If there's any older guys here that was around at that time, who was the contact person in the UAE for this newspaper? Huh? No, Alex Amimi, no, he was here. He's America and Saudi Arabia. Bilal Phillips. His name right there, Bilal Phillips. Who was the contact person in the UK? And we can get Abu Khadija to talk about this, even though I know him personally, but it would be more befitting for him to talk about this person. Who was the contact person for Huda in the UK? Abu Muntasir. Anybody know Abu Muntasir? You ever heard of a group called Jimas? Jimas? Another group that went in another direction. Because we used to have, and they still do, the publications, AL-HIJRA publications. Right? And then those brothers went in one direction, and the other brothers went in the other direction, and the brothers who went in the other direction became to be known as Salafi publications. Abu Muntasir and those brothers went in another direction. In Guyana, South America, we mentioned who was the contact person. The person who started the magazine, his name was what? Imran Hussein. In Canada, the contact person was Abdul Mun'im, the president of QSS. In Jeddah, the contact person for this newspaper that came from America was who? Wajdi al-Ghazawi. Anybody remember him? Huh? Who was Wajdi al-Ghazawi's teacher? No. It's not Sheikh al-Albani, and I can show you why it's not Sheikh al-Albani, because at a conference in South Jersey, not far from here, Wajdi al-Ghazawi said, Sheikh al-Albani is an expert, he's good in hadith, but he's weak in aqeedah. That was the statement of Wajdi al-Ghazawi. Huh? No, not Muhammad Qutb, who I also met. I also met Muhammad Qutb. And I met Muhammad Qutb by way of Wajdi al-Ghazawi. But his teacher was and still is Safar al-Hawali. Safar is his teacher. In Alexandria, Egypt, I guess the Arab brothers, they're going to get this immediately. Who was the contact person for this Salafi newspaper in Alexandria, Egypt? Who used to visit us here in America and visit the UK? Huh? Osama al-Qusi wasn't even known. He wasn't even known. Osama al-Qusi is new. He's new. Relatively speaking, he's new. Who was he? Not Muhammad Hassan. Muhammad Ismail al-Muqaddam, who I used to visit. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I used to visit his home, and he used to come here. And he said to me one time, Dawud, I hear that they saying I'm sorori. I said, yeah, that's what they saying. This was in his house. We find in Texas, the person who was the contact person is Muhammad al-Jibali. We find in Philadelphia, it was a brother named Abdul Batin. Do you brothers know Abdul Batin? Right? He's one of the 4 runners of Salafiyya in Philadelphia, because the first masjid in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to call to Salafiyya was what masjid? Ridge Avenue. Ridge Avenue. Right? And Abdul Batin was the Abu Layla al-Athari of America. Anybody know who Abu Layla al-Athari is? You know, of course, right? Who was he? He was the recorder for Sheikh al-Albani. Abu Layla al-Athari was the recorder for Sheikh al-Albani. He has so many tapes for Sheikh al-Albani. He has recordings of Sheikh al-Albani going to the bathroom. People asking him questions, him going to the bathroom, him walking to his car. Thousands and thousands of tapes. Now, some of them are called Silsilat al-Huda wa Nur. And also another set called Rihlatun Nur. Well, Abdul Batin, Habibullah, Abdul Batin was the Abu Layla al-Athari for us. He was the recorder. If you wanted a tape, go to Abdul Batin. But what happened to our brother? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assist him and help him and make him return. We also have one of the contact people in Ohio, Kamal Najib. Anybody here from Ohio? Kamal Najib. You know our brother Kamal Najib? Right? He was one of the people who ascribed to Salafiyya, but when the fitna happened, we went this way, he went that way. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us come back together on the book and the sunnah and the authentic, the sunnah and the manhaj of the salaf. In Colorado, this is an easy one. Who was the contact person? Jamal Zarabozo. Jamal Zarabozo. And as we mentioned, but we didn't mention the state, in Tennessee, because at one time he was in New Jersey, Springfield, New Jersey, and then he moved to Tennessee. It was Yusuf Yee. The brother who was the chaplain, who they tried to bring those charges up on, with Guantanamo Bay, Yusuf Yee. And then Midtown New York was our brother that I mentioned, Fadl Kareem. In Astoria, Queens, it was Muhammad Sayyid Ahmed. That was at Masjid Bir, because that was the first Salafi masjid in Queens. Astoria, Queens, Masjid al-Bir. And then the other one in Brooklyn, because it wasn't Masjid Ikhwa, like some people think, and it wasn't Masjid Muslimin, like some people think. It was Masjid Mus'ab ibn Umair. Masjid Mus'ab ibn Umair. And then Bay Ridge, New York, was Muhammad Uthman al-Misri. And we go on and on and on. There's another name that's mentioned here. I told you there were three brothers really responsible for introducing me to Al-Aqidah al-Salafiyya. One of them was Sharif Abdul Kareem, who studied in Qura, African American. The other one was his partner. They were classmates, Ibrahim Abdul Aziz, African American. And the other one was brother Ahmed Abdul Qabid, who still lives in New York right now, originally from Coney Island. He was the contact person in Spanish Harlem. In Spanish Harlem, there were Salafis in the 70s. There's the name of the group still exists. Alianza Islamica. Alianza Islamica. Which is, we say in English, what? The Islamic Alliance. Right? Alianza Islamica. There were Cuban Salafis, Puerto Rican Salafis, Brazilian Salafis, from all over the Latin world. The brother who was with us at that time upon Salafiyya, but he's going another direction. His birth name was Ramon Ocasio. He's now Omar Abdurrahim Ocasio. I think he's the Imam. Is the Imam now? He's the Imam of Alianza Islamica. Spanish brothers upon Salafiyya, but Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. He went another direction. And he is the brother-in-law of who? Did you know? Did you know that? Muhammad Sayyid Adli is married. One of his two wives were both Puerto Rican. That's one of his wives. That's his brother. That's their brother. Now, in Boston University, anybody here from Massachusetts? Nobody, huh? In Boston University, there's some traces of Salafiyya at the library there, which is connected to Mughal Memorial at BU, Boston University. There's a library there called Sherman George Union Library. There are traces that Salafiyya or that Salafis were there. In that library, in the Musalla, there's an abundance of books. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Qayyim, Shaykh bin Baz, Shaykh al-Albani, Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, Shaykh Muqbil, we can go, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, that were put there by students. That library was founded in 83, and they were before 83. They donated those books, brothers from Lebanon. For once again, to answer Omar Ali, to say that it was mainly a Gulf state thing, as we said last night, that's not true. As we mentioned last night, we have proof that there were Salafis here teaching Salafiyya from Sudan, from Nigeria. We didn't mention Ghana last night, from Ghana. In fact, the brothers, as I mentioned last night, I don't think we mentioned the name of the group, was called, from Nigeria, was called Izalatul Bid'ah wa Iqamatul Sunnah. That was the name of the group. Izalatul Bid'ah wa Iqamatul Sunnah. The eradication of innovation and the establishment of the Sunnah. That's the name of the group. But because of weaknesses in understanding of minhaj and because of political influences and money coming from like places like Iran and Kuwait, the Shia on one side and Turath on the other side, people go in other directions. People go in other directions. Ask Allah to give us thabat. We used to have visiting us, as we mentioned, some of the ulama. But as we also mentioned last night, Some of those ulama, or many of those ulama, we couldn't get because of the distance. Because of the distance, as opposed to our brothers from the UK, because they were closer to Yemen and closer to Egypt and closer to Saudi Arabia and closer to Kuwait and the other Arab countries where the scholars of Ahl Sunnah were there. But we used to have scholars come, and one of them was from India. And he came to the masjid, maybe some of the brothers were here, when I was the imam in East Orange. Anybody know our sheikh was muhaddith? In fact, he's one of the top muhaddith of Ahl Sunnah of our time. He was visiting us. Anybody know his name? Sheikh who? Sheikh Badi'uddin Shah as-Sindhi, rahimahullah. One of the 4 people who Sheikh Al-Albani said, there are 4 people that I've never met anybody like them, as knowledgeable as them. And he was one of them. He was here with us in New Jersey, in East Orange. And he was Salafi qah. I'm talking about 150% Salafi. And he used to differ with Sheikh Al-Albani in a lot of different issues. Nonetheless, not the issues of aqeedah, by the way, the issues of fiqh. He was hard against the innovators. And one of the groups that he talked about years ago is the same group that people right now, for some strange reason, they have a problem with it when you talk about them. That group where Abu Usama al-Dhahabi is the imam of, Green Lane Masjid, the Ahlul Hadith, or so-called Ahlul Hadith, Jami'iyya Ahlul Hadith, from in Birmingham, who have the extension of Pakistan. Sheikh Badi'uddin Shah, he gave them a seriously strong refutation. Showed unequivocally bid'ah after innovation after deviation, that they do this, they do that, and they're still doing it today. This was in the late 60s and the 70s. So anybody who comes now and says, they want to attack them, they want to attack this particular place, Sheikh Wasi'ullah al-Abbas, he praised them, Hafidhahullah ta'ala. Sheikh Badi'uddin Shah cleared that group up. He demolished them. I'm talking about utterly did away with them. And some foolish people come and they say things like, but Sheikh Wasi'ullah al-Abbas, the brothers from Salafi publications, Sheikh Wasi'ullah al-Abbas, he talks about them, and Abu Khadija and Bilal, and he knows them because he was with them for 6 years in Birmingham. Allahu Akbar. Sheikh Wasi'ullah al-Abbas, some foolish people are saying, was 6 years in Birmingham, England, with the brothers from Salafi publications. What kind of tree did you bump your head on? Sheikh Wasi'ullah al-Abbas was in England for 6 years living with the brothers in Birmingham? قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your proof if you're truthful. Wallahi, if you can get the sheikh to say that he was in Birmingham living for 6 months, 6 weeks, I'd be amazed. You're actually saying something incorrect about the sheikh, and you don't even know what you're saying. The point is that Sheikh Badi'uddin Shah as-Sindhi, rahimahullah, he used to visit us and he used to teach us. For all those people who try to say that Salafiyya, or as they used to call it, and sometimes, as we mentioned last night, we used to call ourselves, some of us, Wahhabi. That Wahhabism is a Saudi thing, or Salafiyya is a Saudi thing. No. You have Salafi ulama from India, strong. From Pakistan, strong. And some of them, as we mentioned, used to come and they used to visit America during our time and before our time. Also, this is another book. This is another book that we used to use back in the early 80s. Jahalat Khatira fi Qadaya al-I'tiqadiyya Kathira. This booklet, and if you look inside, you still see the notes that I took. I used to study with the brothers from this book. This is from Sheikh Asim al-Quryuti. Asim al-Quryuti, who is a teacher right now. He was in Medina, and he's a teacher right now in Riyadh. This is a book that we used to use. And one of our brothers from Minnesota, who's doing his master's right now, some of you have probably seen some of his on his blog, Abu Layth, Qasim Mutiba, from Minnesota. He has translated this because the Sheikh is one of his teachers. The Sheikh is one of his teachers. Walillahi alhamd. It's 21 minutes after 8, and we only have about 9 minutes left. So we want to stop here, inshallah. And if there's anyone that has any questions, we'll take some questions, inshallah, relative to the subject of Salafiyya in America. And once again, as we mentioned last night, remember, we don't have the ability to take someone off the minhaj. They take themselves off the minhaj. When this man right here, for those who have good eyesight in the back, this man right here who ascribed to Salafiyya, what's his name? Yasir Qadi. I remember Yasir Qadi when he was a kid. I remember him when he was a kid. Hafiz of Quran, fluent in 3 languages. Ascribing to and calling to Salafiyya. Look at him now. Look at his associates. This is his Twitter page. He's following 10 people. He has 7,000 on this particular day, the screenshot, 7,586 followers. But he's following 10 people. Look at who he's following. First person is who? Salman al-Auda. Salman al-Auda. Who's the second person? Sheikh bin Bayya. Bin Bayya, they're in Mecca. Anybody know about him? He's the Sheikh of Hamza Yusuf. This is who Yasir Qadi is following. Muhammad Sharif. Anybody know about him? Who? Maghrib Institute. Maghrib Institute. Tariq Ramadan. Anybody know who Tariq Ramadan is? Huh? Switzerland. But do you know who he is? Do you know who his father was? But his father was who? Saeed Ramadan. Saeed Ramadan, who was married to who? Wafa al-Banna, who was who? The eldest daughter of Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. This is who Yasir Qadi is following. And brothers have the nerve to ask, can we read his books? Brothers have the nerve to ask, can we read his book? His books. As some brothers said this morning, but some of the brothers are saying, no, we're going to read the books that, he wrote before he went away. How are you sure you know what his deviations are and you sure you can point them out in the book? Do you think that you're able to go through the book and determine it? Wallahi, brothers, when Abu Hassan al-Ma'rabi wrote that book, Sahih al-Minhaj, when he wrote that book, Sahih al-Minhaj, myself and Abdul Mutakabbir, Abu Abbad, we know our brother, right? In Egypt. Used to be the Imam in Wilkes-Barre. And even Abu Awais, the 3 of us, we used to praise that book. Abu Muslima was with us. We used to praise that book back in the days. And myself and Abdul Mutakabbir, even started teaching from the book. Subhanallah, brothers. When Sheikh Rabi' Hafidhullah did a refutation on him, and he's done many, we know that. when he did a refutation on Abu Hassan al-Ma'rabi, and he did a refutation specifically on that book, Sheikh Rabi'a did 3.5 pages refuting the cover title of the book before he even got into the book. And when we were reading it, we were like praising it and getting, using it in classes. We didn't see anything. The Sheikh took 3 pages of his refutation just on the name of the book, refuting that. So if you think you're safe, if you think that you're strong enough, then go ahead. You can read those books if you want. But buyer beware. Because the people of the past, they were very conscious, as our brother Abu Muhammad, translating from Sheikh Falah, Ismail, Hafidhahumullah, they were very, very conscious of whom they took their knowledge from. And when they saw something wrong, in many cases, they disparaged that person. They made a jarh. And in conclusion, we like to say that some of these people are coming with these false principles. These principles that you have to be patient with a person before you disparage him. That you have to be patient. You show me somewhere from the principles of the Minhaj of the Salaf that it's obligatory to be patient from somebody and you can't disparage him right on the spot with the first mistake. You show me. Show me any of the ulama that says it's wajib to be patient with a person. We're not saying you shouldn't be patient or you can be patient, like Sheikh Rabi'a was with Ma'rabi, like Sheikh Rabi'a was with one of my teachers, and I'm saying it because I had many teachers, those of them that ascribe to Salafiyya and those of them that never ascribe to Salafiyya. One of them that ascribed to Salafiyya is Mustafa al-Adawi, al-Misri, from al-Mansura. I used to sit with him. And I remember one night, we were in the Haram, Mecca, during Ramadan. He said, Dawud, come on, he didn't say Dawud, he said Abu Tasneem. He always called me Abu Tasneem. He said, Abu Tasneem, let's go to Sheikh Rabi'a's house. Let's go to Sheikh Rabi'a's house. I said, okay. We got in the cab, went to Sheikh Rabi'a's house. Listen, look what Sheikh Rabi'a did. Knowing that Mustafa al-Adawi had problems. I didn't know he had problems, but the Sheikh knew he had problems. So when we walk in, if anybody has ever been to Sheikh Rabi'a's house, in his sitting room with his library, you know how it's situated. If right now this is the left side, if I'm facing the Sheikh in his couch, in his sofa, his library is like this, going all the way around. And this is the door that you come in. Right? So we came in, the Sheikh was sitting there in front of everybody. People from all over the world. Algeria, Iraq, all over the world. He's answering questions, etc. So myself and Mustafa al-Alawi come in. Even though it happened in Saudi Arabia, this is a part of the history of Salafi in America. We come in, he's sitting down, I'm sitting to his right, he's sitting to my left. So somebody leans to Sheikh Rabi'a and says, Sheikh Mustafa al-Adawi's here. And subhanAllah, brothers, I have to say it. Mustafa al-Adawi's books are books that are valuable. His books of hadith and his books on fiqh and issues like that, the man has ilm. This man has ilm. He was one of the students of Sheikh Muqbil, and Sheikh Muqbil praised him. So somebody leaned to Sheikh Rabi'a that night. It's around 12:30 in the morning. Taraweeh had finished. They leaned to him and said, Sheikh Mustafa said, Sheikh Rabi'a told him to move over, and he started moving with his hand on the couch and started wiping, this is the way the Sheikh would do it. He started wiping the couch. Come and sit down. And Mustafa al-Adawi said, with, humbleness. No, just go ahead. So the Sheikh kept talking. Then the brother leaned over and said, the Sheikh is here, Sheikh is here. So he did it again. And then Mustafa al-Adawi went up and he sat next to him. And he sat to the Sheikh's right. And a question of hadith came up. And Sheikh Rabi'a transferred or referred that question to Mustafa al-Adawi. Knowing him. Then he went and had a private sitting with the Sheikh. And I was talking to some brothers from Holland. And when we finished, Mustafa Al-Adawi said to me, Abu Tasneem, let's go. And I was catch the cab. And I was still talking. I let him go. He went back to the Haram. After it was over, I told some of the brothers, one of them was Musa Richardson, Abu Abbas. And the other one was Tall Hair Wyatt. I said, we're going to have to go to Sheikh Rabia and talk to him again, because the Americans that are sitting here, it's going to be a problem. Because once they see how the Sheikh treated him, they're going to say he's all right. That's what they're going to say. Because the common people, when they see or hear things, they think things are okay from what they see and what they hear. Because today, amongst the Salafis who are not studying principles of the minhaj of the Salaf, truth has become perception. Truth has become perception. So we went back to the Sheikh the next day and we said to the Sheikh, we saw you talking to Mustafa Al-Adawi, Sheikh Mustafa Al-Adawi, and we think it's going to be some problems. We didn't ask him what he was talking about. That wasn't our business. He said, be patient with him. We know that he has problems with regards to his minhaj, but let's be patient with him. And this is the way the Sheikh is. But don't think, brothers, that it's absolutely obligatory to be patient all the time, because we have an abundance of proofs. In conclusion, inshallah, and I said that about 10 minutes ago. In conclusion, inshallah, we have an abundance of proofs from stories and athar. In fact, the book that Abu Hassan Malik, Hafidhahullah, wa sallamahullah min kulli su' makruh, that he was reading from, the Muqaddamah of Sahih Muslim. When you read the introduction to Sahih Muslim by Imam al-Nawawi, by Imam Muslim, when you read it, you see athar after athar after athar from the athar on people not being patient. Patient meaning disparaging a person right on the spot. Like Abdullah ibn Mubarak. Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He said, if I had the choice, لو خيرت بين أن أدخل الجنة وبين ألقى عبد الله ابن محرر لأخرت أن أدخل الجنة لأخرت أن ألقاه ثم أدخل الجنة. We have a statement from Abdullah ibn Mubarak where he said about this man named Abdullah ibn Muharrar, if I was given the choice to meet Abdullah ibn Muharrar before I enter paradise, I would choose to meet him before I enter paradise, then enter paradise. He said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُهُ كانت بعرة أحب إلي منه. He said, but after I met him, the camel's dung was more beloved to me than him. And what's the evidence from that athar in Sahih Muslim, the Muqaddimah? There's a lot of benefit, but one of the proofs, one of the benefits from that is that he had one meeting with him. Because he had a great passion to meet him with regards to hadith, but found out that he had da'af, that he had weaknesses. And it's muttafiq from the ulama about his agreed upon about his weakness. But he didn't find that out until he met him. So he had the strong desire to meet him because he heard about him and heard about him and heard about him. He said, one time, brothers, not 5 years went by, not 7 years went by, just because he has a master's or a PhD. One time he met him. He said, كانت بعرة أحب إلي منه. The camel dung was more beloved to me than him. Brothers, learn these principles, brothers. learn the principles of the Salaf, the manhaj of the Salaf. Because once again, in order for us to appreciate the history of Salafiyya in America, we have to understand the present time of Salafiyya in America, and we ask Allah to keep our hearts firm on His deen and His obedience and the pure sunnah and the manhaj of the Salaf, and hold on to those ulama and keep embracing those ulama of Ahl Sunnah today, and never ever ask for a khula from those ulama, because they'll never divorce us. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم.
Please make an announcement that you want to add it to the history too. Sisters to be quiet.
And as a part of the history of Salafiyya, which is happening right now, we're asking the sisters again, because historically this has been happening for years. Please be quiet so the other sisters can benefit. If anyone gets the chance to write the history books, or a book on the history of Salafiyya in America, this has to come up.